Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome to what is going to be an introduction video for anyone that's going to be following our 9, 10, 11, or 12th grade classes, 12 or AP classes. What I'm going to do in this video is basically just walk you through what would effectively be the syllabus for 9th, 10th, and 11th, and 12th grade. Now, all we're really going to talk about is what those courses include, what my expectations for you as students are within those 4 different courses, and what the workload might be, what some of the policies might be, what the extra credit opportunities are, and what the kind of summer reading, I'm sorry, not the summer reading, but the independent reading assignments are. So that's all we're really going to do today. Now, let's take a look really quickly. First thing, we're going to go through the curriculum of each class very, very briefly. And you'll see that there's basically a pretty obvious pattern between all of them here. So for 9th grade, we're going to start out with what I call foundations, which, as it says right here, is basically just where we go over some of the very fundamental, basic vocabulary that you need to learn and you need to know in order to kind of ease your way into an English language class or an English language arts class. Now, what I usually tell students to do is if you are not here or if you're just following us, digitally, or if you're in class, whatever the case may be, what you're basically going to cover in that unit is the writing strategies presentation that we did in our Universal Materials series. So that's where we cover all of the basic literary elements and devices. So go and familiarize yourselves with that because that's all we really cover for that unit in particular. Then we're moving on to short stories. So short stories for 9th grade is going to include, I think, only 3 general short stories. I think it's All Summer in a Day, Thank You, Ma'am, and The Monkey's Paw. Then we move on to Greek mythology. We're going to spend probably about a month, maybe a month and a half on Greek mythology, specifically the Odyssey. We're not going to read the entire thing. We're going to read a couple sections of it, some big chunks of it, and then move on from that. We're moving on, of course, to poetry, where we discuss, I think it's 8 separate poems in pretty good detail, as number one, just a way to familiarize yourselves with poetry in general, and also a general way for us to kind of warm up for Shakespeare, which usually is the first time that many of my students are being introduced to Shakespeare. So we're going to start Romeo and Juliet. We are going to read probably the entire thing, and then we move into Animal Farm, which is our novel or really novella for the year. And we use that as an opportunity to learn a lot of really important history, but also learn some good critical thinking skills as well, which of course is a warm up for our final unit. It's shorter, but it's very important, I think, for your general education. And that is, of course, a unit on argument writing and how to write in a, not just what do you want to call it, a persuasive form, but in a critically thinking and very logical way of thinking, where we pick, I think, 1 of 10 rather controversial subjects, either from politics today or from whenever, and we try to write on it in sufficient logical consistency and make a good argument for whatever it is you believe. So that's 9th grade. 10th grade, very similar. As you can see, the structure is basically the same. We have that foundations unit. We're still going to do that. We're going to move into short stories. I think it's 4 short stories, which are much more in depth, I think, than the 9th grade ones. Our text for like a classical text is Antigone, which is an ancient Greek play. So we're going to read that. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time in the middle of the year on both poetry and rhetoric and argument. We're kind of mix all of them together. So we're going to learn, yes, what are the fundamentals of poetry? How do we, understand poetry? How do we understand the way someone speaks in rhetoric? How do we kind of really not just create a very logical and very informed and well-behaved argument, if you want to call it that, but also how do we make an argument that's very, very persuasive as well? How do we actually use the English language to our advantage when we're arguing? And then we're reading Julius Caesar. We are not reading the entirety of this Shakespeare play. We're going to kind of shorten it quite a bit, actually. We're going to cut out, mostly cut out the last 2 acts, just so we can kind of move and work on our first real full novel in 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, which is The Lord of the Flies. We want to spend a lot of time on Lord of the Flies and really try to soak up and get whatever it is William Golding is trying to say to us there, because it's very complex text. But it's very rich. It's very, very rich in what it's trying to say and what it's kind of conveying to us. So that's what we're doing for 10th grade. Now for 11th grade, what we're doing is a various text unit, which is something different than short stories. Various texts is where we kind of take short stories, we take poetry, we take a little bit of nonfiction, sometimes like a philosophy passage, and we just, in mythology as well, and we just kind of smush all these things together into things that would be useful for us throughout the rest of the year. So we're reading, I think, one short story, we're reading 2 poems, and then a couple passages from a nonfiction text. I think it's Socrates' philosophies or his philosophical works. And then we're also going to talk about some good myths as well. Then we move into The Crucible. That's our first major text for 11th grade. It's a good American play. Then we're doing fairy tales. Now we are going to read the original Snow White, and then we're actually going to pick usually, I think it's like 1 or 2 fairy tale or texts in visual format that qualify as fairy tales. Now, what does that mean? That means we're going to be looking at Disney movies or at some other kind of very famous fantastical movies. We're going to analyze them through lenses. We're going to take what we learned about lenses in 10th grade, and we're going to really get in deep to it in 11th grade. And we're going to use that on fairy tales. That's really what the whole point of that unit is. It's not to just inform us about these very popular texts that are fairy tales, but it's also to use fairy tales as a very good medium for learning how to use lenses. Then we do our text for the year, our major novel for the year, which is The Great Gatsby. Okay, it's one of those standard readings for high school. And then we're going to end with, it's not really poetry and reading. I don't know why that's there. That really should be a, what's it called, independent reading is what that's really there for. But again, that's not really a whole unit. So I don't know what I was thinking there. Now, then for 12th grade / AP literature, because depending on what I'm teaching each year, I will usually just use the same curriculum that I use in 12th grade as I would use for AP literature. The only difference, of course, is the workload and the depth of analysis that we go into. So for 12th grade, we're going to once again do a various text unit, same kind of shtick. We're going to look at short stories. We're going to look at poems. We're going to look at myths. We're going to look at biblical texts, especially this year. And then we're going to move on to our novel for the year, which is either going to be Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, good kind of dystopian-ish sort of text, science fiction-ish sort of text, or we're going to do Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, which is a really interesting kind of mythic, very, dramatic sort of love and religious story. So we can pick. I usually have my students as a class usually decide, depending on the class size and how the year is going, I'll usually have my class vote on which one we are going to do as a class, or I let them actually choose which one they want to do, and then we can have some variation with that. We once again will have a poetry unit. The poetry unit is very much shorter in this one. We don't go that much in depth, except for maybe like 1 or 2 poems with this one. It's usually, again, just to kind of refresh ourselves, get ourselves used to understanding this other form of writing that is poetry. And then our major Shakespeare text, of course, for 12th grade is Hamlet, maybe the greatest Shakespeare play, certainly one of the longest. And then we're getting into a new style of unit, which is called The Greats. This is where I provide us with a list of, I think it's 5 or 6 of the greatest, canon works of literature ever. So that would, of course, be things like, the Iliad and the Odyssey of Homer, Beowulf, the Aeneid, Dante's Divine Comedy, Milton's Paradise Lost, and all these sort of works. And I basically, once again, have my students vote on which one they would like to do as a class. Again, depending on the way the year works out, depending on the class sizes, et cetera, sometimes I will let students choose which one they want to do, and then they can go and research that on their own. But generally what we end up doing is we vote as a class, and then that's the one that we will do together as we kind of close off your experience of high school. We like to, close on a really great piece of literature like that. Then we allow you to work on a final thesis, which really quite simple. It's basically where we just kind of create a thesis that you have a little TED Talk attached to it, and it's got to be on something that generally relates to the material we have discussed in class. So that's the overview of 9, 10, 11, and 12, the 4-year process of high school. Now, as for the classes, my general expectations, same as you would expect really in any class: be prepared, be mature, be participating, all this kind of stuff. Be prepared, be in class on time, have your materials, all that kind of stuff. The only materials I have my students usually bring to class are things like a notebook, spare sheet of paper, stuff to write on, things to record your notes in, as well as usually a folder to keep our materials in, and a writing utensil. That's it. That's all you really need for my classes. Maturity, make sure that you're mature. As I said here, be kind and proper to each other and staff. I like us to be respect. I don't like respect. Respect is such a lame word because it's so overused. So I use the term kind and proper. Practice good manners. Practice good social engagement with me and with those around you. Be kind. Show kindness. Show warmth to your friends and your neighbors. That'll make you a much more, popular and liked person, make you happier overall in general. Manage your problems and concerns. Of course, I am very well aware that there are some serious problems and concerns in people's lives. And there are also just kind of more annoying ones that kind of, plague us throughout the days and throughout the years. Try to manage them as best as you can, even if that's telling someone like me, someone like another teacher, a counselor, your parent, or someone that you are having trouble managing them and that you don't really know what to do. Seek out the help that you need. Absolutely. That's part of being mature. What is immature is if we simply just sit and suffer in silence and let our world kind of collapse around us and until where it's essentially too late for us to really help you, at least on an academic level. It's too late for us to really do much about it. So try to get ahead of that game and really seek out help when you're noticing that you really need it, okay? Because we're not going to laugh at you, we're not going to be mean to you, we're not going to scoff you or kind of throw you off. My former students know very well that I will absolutely bend over backwards to do everything that I can to help you and get you through the year and make sure that you are healthy and happy and going to thrive in some way, shape, or form in life. If you reach out to me, essentially, if you reach out to me or demonstrate that you are trying to be mature, it's the students who leave that until the very end of the year that I really have trouble helping because it's just tough. It's just much more tough to help you with that stuff when you're failing multiple quarters, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore be responsible, of course, be responsible for what you have to do. First and foremost, to maintain your own physical, social, and emotional needs. And I mean needs, I don't mean like, perfect well-being. I mean, be healthy, right? Make sure you get enough sleep, make sure, you're getting a good diet, make sure you're being active, make sure you're being social, all that stuff, and make sure you are organized and doing your work and preparing for the future, all that good stuff. Now, also be participating. Okay, of course, we are in class. Make sure that you are sharing your thoughts with me. Make sure if you have an idea that you throw it out at me because easily half of the things that I hear in class, if not more, are things that I will absolutely take and then share with other classes. I've had profound insights from students that tell me, hey, what if we read the Odyssey like this? What if we look at Milton like this? What if we do this? And I will have totally never thought of that. I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a brilliant point. Awesome. I am not a genius. Okay. I am not a English literature doctorate, master interpreter. I would like to learn from you. You guys come with new experiences, new applications to life, and new ways of looking at things. So tell me. Sometimes they might be wrong. Sometimes they might be, kind of right. Sometimes they might be very valid. Sometimes they might be brilliant. So let's find those things because that's what is fun about learning overall. Okay. General questions that I have students ask. How hard is high school, right? How difficult is it? I don't really remember. I don't really know all that much. I think personally, from my perspective, of course, that high school is not so much hard. It's just generally like a good chunk of work. It's like a lot of work, ladies and gents, particularly to maintain your grades, to maintain your own kind of like healthy living habits, all this kind of stuff. You may look back on high school and think, it wasn't that hard. It was just a lot of work, right? There was just a lot of things to do. It wasn't like each task was particularly difficult and tedious and hard. It was just more like, it's a lot to do. So I think you'll get used to it. I think by the time you hit like junior-ish year, I think you'll be pretty used to a lot of the workload that we have. And personally, for my class, the workload is not too difficult. I don't give homework. I do not like to send my students home with like packets and packets and chapters of things to do. I usually will not assign reading outside of class. The only work that I usually give students to do outside of class is work that they haven't finished in class, okay? So the workload for my classes, I think, is relatively fair. Same thing with essays and stuff. Essays are all done in my class. So I think, if we can contain usually the hour and a half or whatever it is, hour, depending on the schedule for the year, if we can contain all of our work in this room, basically, I think we actually have a pretty good workload that's quite manageable for most students. Failing. Yes, this is something I always talk about, usually with ninth graders, but I'll just say it here anyways. Yes, failing is a reality that we need to remember, we need to acknowledge. That I do fail students. There have been, a good handful of students, probably like, 5 out of 100, so like 5% each year that do fail. Now, I like to bring that up, especially to ninth graders, like I said, because coming out of middle school, usually we have this kind of idea, depending on what middle school experience you had, that, you know, it's hard to fail, right? We can kind of usually get pushed through the system. Middle school teachers or middle school administration is loath to fail a student, or loath to kind of keep them back, and likes to throw them into high school no matter kind of how they're doing. That is not the same for high school, especially at an institution like where I teach, where it's a private school. We are not obligated by the state, as we know very well from public schools. They're very loath to actually hold students accountable and be honest about a student's abilities and the workload that student is or isn't producing. It's not the same in private school. We are not beholden to anyone to lie or to fib or to kind of work out this sort of Stalinist system where we like to pretend that we're a lot more successful than we are. You know, those schools who do that know who I'm talking about. Now, for that reason, it's a reality. I mean, students need to remember, like, if you don't do the work, we are not going to push you through. So that being said, again, it's only like 5 students like per year. So something, I mean, like last year was only 1. So it changes, of course, but just know that you are not going to be pushed through the system, that you are going to be held accountable. And we also want to be, of course, aware in high school that our grades and our performance now is essentially like on public record, where if we have aspirations to go to college, aspirations to go to a sports league, or go into a trade school, or go just into the workforce, the people who kind of guard the gates to those opportunities are going to look at your grade. They're going to see how you did. So, and then your performance in high school overall, so your resume, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to see it. Okay. And they're going to talk to people like us. They're going to talk to your teachers, your counselors, your administrators, and they're going to want to know, is this person a good student? Is this person a good person fundamentally? Is this person, a good worker? Are they competent? Are they responsible? All this kind of stuff. Your grades are maybe one of 3 or 4 ways that is reflected. So we don't want to have multiple failing grades on our resume. I mean, like sometimes they really do get nitty gritty into this. I mean, I remember the person who interviewed me for my college admittance actually found my I gave them my my transcripts, and they asked, hey, and this was in like 11th or 12th grade. They were saying, hey, what happened in freshman algebra? And I was like, oh, I had like a 77 or whatever in freshman algebra. And I'm like, I was not a very good student with mathematics, but I really pushed and I worked hard. And he talked to my teacher and he found out, yeah, the guy actually was a pretty good worker. So they do look into these things, guys. Okay. So be aware of this. Don't hyper stress over it. My God, you are not defined by your grades. Please don't think that. Don't let it drive you into despair and serious depression if you're failing, or if you failing for a quarter, or if you failed this test or that test. It's like you need to find that good balance of like, yeah, we want to do well, we want to reflect well, but like if you're not getting 95 and above, it's like that is not anywhere near the end of the world. Teachers and parents sometimes really misunderstand that and kind of inject much more stress than is needed about those particular things. So find the balance. Okay, find the balance, please. Okay, now, speaking of which, free advice that I give, particularly 9th and 10th graders, but everyone could really use it. Number 1, listen to people's advice, okay? It's like a plastered feature of my classes, that I remind my students that we, that is me, you, everybody around us, every human being, are students. We are learning. Why? Because we are in need of knowledge. We are in need of advice. Fundamentally, if you want to be really mean about it, is because we are stupid, ladies and gentlemen. So we are ignorant. We are all very much in need of education. So do me a favor, in order to make your life easier, in order to make your life also more joyful, okay, actually more happy, keep learning, okay? Always learn. Listen to people's advice. Seek out people's advice. Don't pretend to be this master sage who knows everything about everything. Stop it. Drop the act. You're not that smart, okay? Neither am I. Let's just talk to people. Let's learn from everybody sincerely, all right? And then I think you will be more successful at every level if you do that. Make your life less annoying, okay? Now, what that usually translates to with 9th and 10th graders is like, take care of yourself, okay? Take care of your work, be practicing healthy habits. So for example, go to bed on time, right? Get enough sleep, please, if you're getting up at 5 o'clock, go to bed around 9 or 10, please, because the more you shirk on how much sleep you're getting, the more miserable you're going to feel. So a lot of my students who do feel miserable or look miserable I'll just simply ask them, are you, you feeling this? You feeling this? It's like, yeah, I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling this or that. It's like, okay, well, how much sleep are you getting? Oh, I went to bed at 3 a.m. I'm like, oh, okay, last night, that's not that good. They're like, no, for the past 3 weeks. I'm like, oh, so be careful, guys. You're not getting enough sleep and really harming your physical health is going to reverberate very quickly into your psychological, your emotional, and your actual your every other dimension of your health, basically. So be careful of that, please, and make your life less annoying in that sense. Okay, do your work, organize your work, seek out advice when you need it. Okay, ask for people's help, listen to people's advice, all this kind of stuff. There's just this notion that people like to kind of go through life with blinders on and want to just do what they want to do and just kind of let whatever's happening around them happen. It's like, that's going to really kind of cause a lot of future problems for you. So be careful with that, right? Sacrifice a bit now to have much more later. Okay, basic principle of self-discipline. All right, now discipline and or self-control is one of the fundamental skills I think that high school is trying, as much as it fails at times, is trying to inculcate in students. Now, that's why when we say, like, oh, what's the point of this? What's the point of that? What's the point of that? I'm like, well, at the most fundamental level, aside from just trying to educate you a little bit more, I think the major point of a lot of those things is to teach you discipline. Okay, teach you to actually be able to set aside what you want to do in the moment and control yourself and actively choose to do whatever job is in front of you. The more you're able to do that, the more at least materially successful you will be in the future. And I think that same could be said for your own kind of relationship success, your own personal success at every level. So people who are very, very disciplined, have a lot of discipline, will have much more success and therefore much more happiness in the future, okay, in every dimension of their lives. So try to inculcate that in yourself as soon as possible, because it's a lot harder to learn discipline down the road. Now, the last one, of course, is expect to fail at all of those things I just said. Expect to fail. Expect to, maybe fail a class here and there, maybe fail a test here and there, maybe, miss a critical point of advice that you should have listened to, either from mom, from dad, from a counselor, from a teacher, from me, whatever. Expect to fail on the principles that you set up for yourselves. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to do. We're here, there's the bell, by the way, for class. We're here to learn how to pick ourselves back up and look at what we did wrong and then grow from it. Okay, that's fundamentally what we are trying to do here. So be gentle with yourselves, be graceful with yourselves, forgive yourselves for those failures, and move on and grow from it, because then you'll be way stronger if you had never failed potentially in the first place. Okay. Now, finally, as a last point, as kind of an extra credit point, what I usually do is I'll post these up on my board, because they're not yet totally formulated into the if you learn nothing else, right? But these are just some points that I like to reveal to my students, or like to say to my students, that end up showing up on the final exam, by the way, for some major extra credit. They're just some things, some kind of themes or elements that I notice that keep kind of coming back in our literature, in our discussions, again and again and again, that I think are very, very important things for all of us to learn and kind of apply to our own personal lives as we move into the workforce, into relationships, into our own future, whatever it is, whatever our futures may be. These are really, really useful things to grab onto, to try to embody as we move through life. Like I said, I haven't totally created the, if you learn nothing else in high school, learn these 12 things, but stuff like these will probably make it into that list eventually. The first thing, of course, is a quote from Nat King Cole's song, Nature Boy. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Which, ladies and gents, fundamentally, I do believe is the greatest thing to learn, that we really need to learn to love everyone around us, our family, our friends, our romantic partners. If you're religious, God. If you're not religious, some kind of serious moral principles, something like that. Love yourself, accept yourself, all this kind of stuff. It's a fundamental reality. And to be loved in return, to find that intimacy in a truly good and honest relationships, is, I think, one of the major things that we can learn to do, if not the greatest thing we can learn to do in life. So start early and try to learn how to do that. Then the next one, your greatest enemy. So the greatest hindrance to that process is the ignorance, the weakness, and the cruelty within ourselves. It's a major feature of a lot of the literature and artwork that we look at in all of literature and all of art. The major feature is that it reveals that there is something very broken about the human condition, that we are not perfect, that we are nowhere near perfect, that we need to grow. That's part of the purpose we're in school. It's part of the purpose we're always looking for advice. We're ignorant, okay? We really don't understand a lot about ourselves, a lot about the world around us, a lot about others, a lot about the past, a lot about all this kind of stuff. We are also very weak. We're weak-willed, right? Not just physically weak, but we're weak-willed. We don't want to do the work. We don't want to kind of get up in the morning and do what we have to do. We're looking for shortcuts all the time. We're very lazy. And unfortunately, even worse than that, and it might be less true with you, might be more true with you, whatever, there are some of us who are just innately kind of mean and looking to harm and looking to make the world or a situation worse than it needs to be. And we need to deal with that. We need to deal with that in ourselves, because if we don't conquer any of those things, or we don't seriously make improvements on any of those things, that's going to mean a lot more suffering and a lot less joy in our lives. So we need to really understand these fundamental flaws that we have as human beings. And I think also, by the way, doing that will make you a lot more patient in life. When you encounter people who are struggling with these things, maybe as much, if not more, than you are, it'll make you much more patient with them. Because remember, the bell. If you'll remember at a very baseline level, this is something that we are all struggling with, okay? So it'll help you empathize, of course, with them too, which is a very, very good thing, especially as we move through, you know, the more and more increasingly diverse worlds. Absolutely want to empathize with everybody at a fundamental level. The third thing here, the worst trait we can have, therefore, by far, is arrogance, pride, and or self-centeredness, okay? Once again, whether you look at any of the world religions, when you look at any of the world myths, if you look at any of the really great works of literature, any of the stuff, whether you talk to major psychologists, whether you talk to like anyone who's been in good relationships throughout their entire lives, all the people, all throughout human history, all of our works say this: the worst trait we could have, we could embody by far, is arrogance, is self-centeredness, is pridefulness, is this idea, this kind of narcissistic idea that we are way more intelligent than we really think we are, that we are way more valuable than anyone else around us, that we need to be the focus of everyone's attention, and all of this kind of stuff. That is the biggest hindrance, I think, to many people's true long-lasting happiness and success. People like this, ladies and gents, will not be truly happy in life. I've known enough people in my life, you know, and I'm relatively young. I've known enough people to see that those who live this way slowly but surely lose more and more loved ones throughout their lives. But by lose, I mean that they drift away, that we lose more and more of that source of joy, which is love, the more and more we go through life, okay? So try, and please keep trying to exercise those traits out of yourself. Truly practice more and more humility, less and less arrogance. Okay. Now, the last one, of course, the purpose of life. Yes, we know the purpose of life, ladies and gents. It's articulated in many different ways, but it's all fundamentally the same purpose. Everyone likes to think, oh my gosh, it's a mystery, it's a mystery. It's not a mystery. You go look at, again, any of the world religions, any of the major world philosophies, any of the classical works of literature, they all generally are directing us towards something very similar. I've distilled it here. If you want to distill it differently with the same general idea, awesome. But the way I usually communicate to students is this: the purpose of life and the key to true joy is to become a truly good and virtuous person, okay? That's what we're supposed to do. We are transforming. We need to transfigure ourselves. We need to continue on the journey of life. We need to find true love, in the sense that we need to actually become, a truly loving person. We need to kind of really prepare ourselves to be a really good partner, or a good child, or a good, parents, whatever it may be. We need to change. Okay, we need to grow. We need to become. We need to be more filled with life, to use the religious term. We need to improve, essentially. Okay, that's the purpose of life. And I think if you understand that and really foster that in your own life, you'll have more fulfillment. Okay, you'll really see the true kind of purpose and objective meaning that exists in the world and in life. Okay. All right, so that is a quick, what do you want to call it? A quick presentation that we will give usually to all 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Now, just some really nitty-gritty things. For purposes of grading policy, because we're going to move on to just that kind of stuff real quick and we'll be done for the video. Grading policy stuff. Do we have homework? No, we do have participation grades though, right? So for my 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, when you come into the room, I am grading you usually on a scale of 1 to 3, 0, 1, or 3, 1, 2, or 3, on your participation. Are you here on time? Are you prepared? Do you have all your materials? Are you engaging with the class? All that kind of stuff. If you're doing all of that consistently, you get a 3 out of 3. That's 10% of your overall grade for the entire year. So that's great. If you're coming in and you're late and you come in or you're disruptive or you're coming in and you're just falling asleep and all this kind of stuff, then you're getting 0 out of 3, which could potentially mean that you drop 10% of your grade by the end of the year. So be careful of that. Don't do that. Classwork grades. Classwork grades are usually the majority of what I give out throughout the semester. There are a huge amount of points that I give out in classwork grades. By the way, each quarter, I generally shoot for like 600-ish points of assignments. And that means that we're going to be earning a total of 600 points with all of our assignments for each quarter. Now, classwork grades usually can be worth anywhere from 20 to 30-ish points. So anywhere in that general range, which means there's a lot of them, okay? So if you don't do well on one, it's not a big deal, okay? It's not a huge deal. You give it a lot of time to make that stuff up. Now, here's the policy with grading and classwork policy stuff. If you do not complete a classwork assignment in class, then it becomes homework. Then you have to come and do it, outside of class. You got to finish it at some point. And you can come give it to me anytime after that class up until the end of the quarter for full credit. Okay, you will have no late points on classwork assignments. What I will do, however, is when I'm grading the assignments, usually in the next day or the next week or whatever I get to it, generally try to not let it go that long, is I will put a 0 in the grade book if I don't have yours. That is not a permanent 0. That is just a warning to you, maybe to your parents, maybe to somebody, that there are things missing in the grade book. There are things that you still need to turn in. So again, it's not a permanent 0. Like if someone doesn't turn in like a 40 points assignment, there's a 0. They can come in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks until the end of the quarter, give it to me, I'll grade it, gets full credit. Okay, so that's the policy with classwork. Now, minor assignments. Minor assignments or minor assessments, right, are usually things that are 50 to like 75 points. That's generally in my classes going to be a quiz. So like coming in, sitting down, multiple choice quiz on a particular work that we're reading. Those are 50 points generally, or 75, depending on how long the quiz is. And those are just one and done. You come in, you take it, you get however many points you get, and that's it. There's no redos, there's no makeups, there's none of that kind of stuff. You just got to come in and do it. So, if you bomb a quiz, here or there in each quarter, it's not going to kill you. There's ways to make it up, as I'll show, but it's not going to be a huge deal. If you keep doing it though, yeah, it's going to kind of add up. Then major assignments, what are those? It's English class. So a major assignment is probably going to be an essay. Sometimes I might throw a test out there. Sometimes we'll have like a bigger project, like for independent reading projects for a course, like those are like 200 points. But usually an essay is out of 100 points. It's just a kind of like big test grade that we throw in the grade books, usually probably like once a quarter or so. So you really don't want to do poorly on those because those are a big chunk of your grade. But again, like if you're not doing great on them, like you can still make things up, classwork and other kind of stuff. What's the policy with those? Let's say, for example, that you don't do well on an essay or that you don't like your grade on an essay/major assignment. What I allow students to do once for each major assignment is they can come to me in my classroom and they can say, hey, Mr. G, can I go over this with you? Can I see why I got the grade that I did? And I will say, absolutely. We'll take a seat. We'll take like a half an hour at most, and we'll go through. And I'll say, here's an error. Here's what we got to improve on. All this kind of stuff. I'll go through the essay point by point with you. And then I will hand it back to you and allow you to kind of sit in the room and edit it right there with me, either with me or on your own. And then I'll take it back and then I will regrade it for you. Usually it's going to be a lot better. And then I will put that grade in the grade book. So you are allowed one rewrite after a conference with me per major assessment. which is great, okay? Because a lot of students usually take advantage of that and do a lot better. Because again, I'm not trying to sink your grades in this class. I'm trying to improve your skills. So if you can improve your skills, then that's great. Let's get you a better grade as a result, okay? So that's grading, all right? Now, let's say at the end of the quarter, or as the quarter's kind of rounding out, you're like, I don't really like my grade. I want to get honor roll. I want to get high honor roll. I want to get B passing, whatever the case may be. And you need like, a couple points here or there to do so. Can I just regrade your thing, or can you do some kind of weird extra credit assignment? Generally, no, but I do provide a form of extra credit in the form of a larger assignment each quarter. And that's what this is right here. So each quarter, you are allowed to do an extra credit assignment where, depending on the quarter, you can come in and write an essay on any one of these given prompts, depending on the quarter, of course. And then you're going to, again, do that in class with me, or in a free period, or after school, or whatever it is with me. And then you're going to hand it in, and I'm going to grade it. And I'm going to give you somewhere out of 70 points. 70 points, of course, would be like if it's nearly a perfect essay, if I really liked it, all this kind of stuff. That's then going to be injected into your gradebook wherever it needs to be, which could be anywhere. So if, for example, like in a worst case scenario, you really bombed an essay and you're like, oh my gosh, I got like, a 30 on this essay. Well, I can just go, and let's say you did an outstanding job on one of these essays. I can just grab that 70 points, slap it into your essay, then you have 100, okay? So we can improve your grade quite a bit through this. Now, again, depending on the quarter, go through, check out the assignment, usually relates to something we're doing in class. And because of that, guys, by the way, I don't allow you to choose something that we have read in class. So let's say, for example, like, for quarter one, someone wants to come in 12th grade and do an extra credit essay on A Good Man Is Hard to Find. I will not allow them to do that, because that is a short story that we do read in 12th grade. You got to pick something else, okay? If it's something that you've read already, that's totally fine, right? If you read The Raven, in 11th grade, and you're sitting here in 12th grade trying to do this, then go ahead and do that. That's fine. So that's extra credit generally. I encourage people to do it, but I don't like to really foster this hyper anxiety over grades, guys. So if like you get a 95 in my class, that's good, okay? That's fine. Don't stress yourselves out by trying to work an extra 3, 4, 5 hours just to kind of bump it up to like a 98 or a 100, all right? It's not that important. You're not going to be, dropped out of a college as a result. So be careful, okay? Be careful with your mental health. Don't stress over grades too much, please. But it's there if you need it. Okay, now last thing, and then we are done. The independent reading assignments. Every class will have an independent reading assignment each semester. And what that basically means is that depending on your grade level, 9, 10, or 11th, all right, 12th grade is usually a little bit different, so they're a separate category right now. For 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, you can choose to read whatever you want, as long as it's school appropriate, whatever you want, as long as it adds up to 90, 150, or 200 pages, respectively, to 9th, 10th, or 11th grade. Okay, so if you're in 9th grade, got to read 90 pages. And if you're in 11th grade, you got to read 150, etc. So I don't really care what you read. I just care that you are reading to some degree. Okay, I like to foster your literacy through your own interests. Okay, so if you're obsessed with, I don't know, animals, read a book on animals. If you're obsessed with Star Wars, read a Star Wars novel. If you're obsessed with hockey, with football, with lacrosse, whatever, read a book on that. Read something about that. If you really have a childlike kind of obsession with Captain Underpants, go grab a Captain Underpants book and read 90 pages of it. But Mr. G, they're not 90 pages long. So grab 3 of them that they add up to 90 pages and then, make it work. That's what we're kind of doing here. I want you to dive into what you enjoy, what you like, okay? I don't like to kind of be the English teacher that's saying, oh, you're reading too much about dinosaurs, in high school. No. Screw that, okay? Read what you enjoy. You're going to grow. You're going to foster your skills either way. So go ahead and do it and enjoy it. Now, once you do that, yes, you're going to come in and you're going to write an essay about it at the end of the semester. The essay is going to be an open thesis essay about whatever you want to talk about, okay? Whatever you want to say about this particular work. We'll deal with that when it gets there, but generally just know, guys, that essay, it needs to basically communicate to me that, yeah, you're a good writer, you can create a good thesis, but it's fundamentally also got to show me that you read the book, that you read the material, okay? So there's usually, yeah, like it says here, we need to provide like 6 pieces of evidence, we need to provide a good, clear thesis, and so on and so forth, and just basically follow the writing standards that we emphasize in class, okay? So that's what's going to happen each quarter. Now, last thing about this is that, yes, there is the opportunity for preferential grading. What does that mean? That means I will look at your assignments and I will kind of grade you on a bit of an upward curve if you choose to read something that is quote unquote a work of literary merit. Now, what does that mean? That usually means something in the past, or something that is considered famous or a famous piece of literature from like before the past 20 years, okay? So like, 1990 and before, if we got something that's famous from before then, like as this show here, Dracula, Shakespeare, the Lord of the Rings, all this kind of stuff, even Harry Potter, for an example, these more famous pieces of literature, I will give you a higher grade if you read those. So let's say, you tried reading Dracula, right? I had a student read Dracula 3 years ago. And the project was pretty solid, right? And it was like, it did a good job with this, with this, with this. And then I probably would give it, objectively, like a B, right? Like I would give it a B. Well, I would remember, wait a minute, this person did a work of literary merit. This person gets preferential grading. So I'll give it an A instead, all right? It curves that much. Now, there's also a possibility for extra credit here, right? Kind of like extra preferential grading. And this is where I'm showing my very clear bias as educator, so forgive me. But I have selected a couple different groups of works here that I will give you even more preferential grading for as sort of an incentive to increase your education, just because there are some things that I think everyone should maybe try to read or get exposed to by the time they're done with high school. So I encourage you to try these. That is, of course, are the works of Dostoevsky. I think Dostoevsky is one of the greatest novelists of all time. Charles Dickens, same thing. The Lord of the Rings, one of the best-selling novels, the best-selling novel of the past century. So probably should take a look at that. The Gulag Archipelago, the abridged version, preferably, unless you want to really, read the whole thing. Fantastic work, right? We really, really need to learn more about what was done in communist systems because it's pretty awful. And Man's Search for Meaning, which, by the way, is under 150 pages, when I still allow students to use this one for extra credit. So it's a very short work, but it's an extremely useful work, so especially for students who are struggling to find meaning in their lives. So I really encourage you to try that one and get even more extra credit points, okay? So that's independent reading for you. That is the extra credit, and then that is the general walkthrough for all of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to English 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. Follow us as diligently as you can, and I hope that you enjoy your time. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Bye.